Nurses who have to ask the famous intimate history question. What was the best answer you got? Navy Hospital Corpsman here. After my ship pulled into Cyprus for a 3-day Liberty port, I had a line about 10 people deep of sailors and Marines in medical looking to see the dock. The first two presented with the same discharge and swelling and stuff turned out to be a rather nasty clap/chlamydia combo, and when I dove a little deeper, I found out they went to the same brothel. A little deeper than that, and found they even saw the same girl. So 4 people in, same deal. When the next one walked in, all I asked with raised eyebrows was, Selena, supposed lady's name. And with a subtle and ashamed confirmatory nod, they sat on the table ready for the dreaded boar punch. 5 out of 9 people I treated that day went to see the same lady. We now have a Discord. Check out the server in the link in the description. Story 2. Not a nurse, but the best response I've heard to this question was from a quiet guy in my freshman college English class. Somehow, our discussion on vaccines led to this topic, and he told a story about his doctor asking if he was active. His perfect response was, "Bro, I'm not even socially active." Yeah, that is a whole mood, dude. Story 3. When I was in year 7, probably 11 or 12 years old, I broke my foot in a way that needed minor surgery. So my cute 20-something nurse was asking me the pre-questions with my dad. When she got to the personal part, she asked if I wanted my dad to leave the room. I said no because whatever. When she asked if I was active, I turned to my dad and said in a loud whisper, "I want her to think I'm cool." Story 4. Not a nurse, but a former phlebotomist/health historian for the largest blood collection organization. One of the donors was an older lady, maybe early 70s. There were 5 to 10 intimate history questions in a row. In the middle of them, she blurts out, "Honey, I've been dried up for years. Nobody's been digging in this for a long time." Story 5. Work at a children's hospital, so usually not that important, since most of my patients are in diapers. We had a 14-year-old with multiple STDs. Thankfully, all could be treated with some antibiotics. When asking her intimate history, she couldn't remember all of them, but there were at least 9 partners. The weird part was her mom wanted us to talk about medical information outside of the room so her precious angel wouldn't be corrupted with all the intimate talk. We informed her that we already crossed that bridge. Story 6. When I was in nursing school, we had these questionnaire things we had to ask our patients for homework. Most of the questions were pretty simple and basic, like family medical history or what current medication they were taking, etc., etc., etc. And it was designed to get us used to asking questions and to begin developing rapport with the patient. Well, since this was my first year of nursing school, I was still a little awkward asking the intimate questions and was nervous. And when I came around to asking these questions to an 85-year-old man whose wife was sitting right next to him, the conversation went a little like this. So, sir, some of these next questions may be a little bit personal, and if you are too uncomfortable answering them, you can just tell me and we can move on. Internal me, please be uncomfortable. Oh, please be uncomfortable. Oh, please. Sure, go ahead. You need to know all this stuff for your career. Ask away. Damn. Usually there were 5 or 6 questions that I would ask, but today I could only get past this one. Okay, sir. Are you and your wife still intimately active? He looks up at me, then the ceiling, and then to his wife and says, "Sweetie, how would you describe our intimate life?" Wife, without missing a beat. "Oh, probably that you jumped on a wild hog at the ripe age of 19 and are still hanging on for dear life." Then she leans closer to me and whispers, "I try to buck him off every night, but he keeps hanging on." Then she winks. I almost died of laughter. Best response ever. There are a lot of people who say the bedroom dies after marriage. Clearly not for this couple. Good for them. Story 7. From my time as an army medic in Germany circa 2003. Had a guy report to sick call with personal filled out on his sick call slip. 99% of the time this means STD or something wrong with the reproductive bits. I was the fortunate one to pull his chart for screening. I got him into the exam room, got him to verbalize exactly what personal reason he was in the aid station for. It was sores on his dong. Okay. I start prepping the culture swab and continue getting the history. How long he had the sores, when he last banged, any burning or irritation while urinating. His answers were a few days, never, and no. Wait. You said you didn't bang? What about intimate contact? To include oral, anal, genital on genital. I'm a virgin. I've never been with anyone else. What the frick are these sores from? I've been jerking it a bunch. How much? 8 times a day. Our PA ended up sending him back with a profile to his chain of command prohibiting jerking it more than once a day. Story 8. My coworker is a very conservative Christian, only wears scrub skirts, doesn't cut her hair, etc. She at one point was taking care of a 60-something-year-old man who was in for an amputation or something. She was doing an assessment and asked the significance of a certain tattoo. Are you sure you want to know? Sure. Turns out the dude was a trained and certified dominatrix, or whatever the male version is. He went on to explain the details and and requirements of his training to my coworker for a good 4 to 5 minutes, stating finally that the tattoo was a trademark of some kind. My poor coworker walked out of the room with the most disturbed look on her face. Wouldn't give us any details, but it takes a fair amount to rattle a nurse. Story 9. Not a nurse and did not take intimate history, but maybe this counts. I worked in an infertility clinic. We had a young couple who came to the clinic to get pregnant. We couldn't find a cause for their infertility. Both were young and in textbook perfect health. We brought them in to give them the test results. All infertility investigations were normal, and to give them the treatment plan. The nurse saw them first and came out with an odd look. She said, "Just trust me on this, but you need to go tell them about the birds and the bees." I was all, "I'm sorry, what?" And she said, "It's just a gut feeling I have." So I did. I prefaced my talk by saying, "I'm going to tell you some information. Please save your questions till I'm done." Then I gave them detailed and explicit instructions on what they needed to do it. Both looked shocked at first, then deeply embarrassed. Neither met my eye and both left the clinic without another word. Next visit, pregnant. I don't know what they were doing to this day, but all's well that ends well. Story 10. My doctor told me a story once. A bit off topic here, but oh well. Back when they first started performing vasectomies, doctors had to call their patients back for standard follow-up questioning a number of weeks after the procedure. He told me he got the same answers from all of the couples he interviewed. Any sensation change? No. Any performance change? No, etc. This went on and on. Until one day, he asked a couple if there were anything different after the procedure. Any changes at all? The wife said yes. There is a huge difference since he had the surgery. My doc was very surprised, and when he inquired further, the wife said, "It tastes different." Oh. He said that was all he could say to keep from laughing as he made the note of seminal fluid tastes different after procedure. Story 11. I was a young, 22-year-old medical student writing a 5,000-word case report about a psych patient of my choosing. This involves a pretty in-depth summary of a patient's life, including things like early development and the intimate history. I eventually decided to interview this girl about the same age as me, and managed to stammer out, I have to ask you about your, age of intimate awakening. She laughed out loud and told me I was blushing. I don't even remember what her answer was. I just remember dropping my spaghetti that day. Yeah, having to ask that would also make my knees weak and my arms heavy too, buddy. Story 12. Kinda off topic and not me, but here goes. My friend called a nurse hotline because she was having horrible menstrual cramps. "You must be having a miscarriage," they said. "I really don't think so." "Are you intimately active?" Yes, I am." "Well, then you're obviously having a miscarriage." "I'm a lesbian." "Oh, well, would you like to speak to one of our LGBT staff?" As if the normal staff doesn't know how to interact with someone who's gay? They were probably just flustered, I get that, and also probably just embarrassed that they made that assumption, but still. Story 13. Many years ago, I had to accompany my grandma, RIP 2013, to a deposition/hearing. I can't remember exactly what it was. She was suing a grocery store because a shelf collapsed on her hand and broke her wrist. There was a big conference room table with her doctor there, attorneys, and other official people. Anyway, as they were going down the checklist of questions asking how this injury affected her life, the attorney asked, "Would you say that your intimate life has been negatively affected?" Granny holds up her cast and says, "Hell yes!" I was mortified. The room was humming with muffled giggles. Story 14. I worked in a prison and our intimate history question gets a little more in-depth. However, my favorite answer of all time followed the question, "Have you ever used drugs or illicit substances?" To which the inmate responded no, he had never. Then the intimate history question came up, and he said, "Well, I snorted drugs off of an escort, but I didn't bang her, so does that count?" We had to restart the questionnaire. Story 15. During my clinicals in school, I had an ER rotation. Now, I like the ER. It's exciting and you see some really weird stuff. I was baptized in the weird crap puddle by a 14-year-old chick who came in with abdominal pain. So my preceptor, this was early in clinicals, is doing his thing and asking medical history. When he asks her if she was intimately active, she says yes. Preceptor asks last encounter, thinking something was up. To which she responded right before I came here. So preceptor asks if she can describe the nature of her pain. She says yes. It's probably from the cucumber in my butt. You frickin' what? Turns out, yeah, she had a cucumber in her butt. Story 16. So I answer the phone in my ER once and I'm greeted with a long sigh and then a steady stream of verbal diarrhea explaining the reason for the call. It went like this. So my boyfriend and I were banging and we both have herpes and he pulled out and got some in my eye. Do I need to come in? I proceeded to tell her that she should probably seek treatment if she wasn't on an antiviral currently. We saw her an hour later and her eye was as red as a tomato. I sent a nursing student in to get her history without telling her what happened. The look on the student's face? Priceless. Story 17. Army combat medic here. One guy came in with a very swollen eye that had kept getting worse. As it turns out, the guy went to a fully nude strip club Saturday night and had a great time with the women there. So much fun that one stripper shoved her kitty in his eager face. The next day, his eye was puffy. By Monday morning, sick call. It was so swollen he couldn't open his eye. And the erythema and edema was spreading over that half of his face. It was pretty jarring to look at. PA sent him for emergency surgery, and this is where I arrive at the point of the story. After draining his eye and flushing it, they looked for any particulate that could have caused the irritation. And they found a crab. Well, the lady had crabs, so when she shoved dude's face into her kitty, some crabs took a journey and got stuck beneath his eyelid. It was this guy's first time going to a strip club too, but it sure as hell wasn't his last. How can this happen to you and you decide to go back? I couldn't even imagine. I would already feel like a little bit of shame going there in the first place, and then that happens to me, I would be like, alright, I get it, my bad, won't happen again. Story 18. I've told similar versions of this story before. I was around 8 months pregnant and working as an ER nurse. I had a very round, beach ball-esque, obviously pregnant belly going on. A woman came in with the chief complaint of lower abdominal pain that came in waves, and also reported experiencing a clear liquid discharge that she said it felt like it peed her pants. But point blank denied being pregnant. She had a big sweatshirt and jacket on at first. She came back to me and changed into her gown with me in the room, and she was clearly, visibly pregnant. And my immediate suspicion was that she was in labor. I point blank asked if she was pregnant, and she looked at me bewildered and stated she couldn't be, because she hadn't banged in over 6 months. I asked her when the last time she was intimately active was, and she reported sometime in September, which was sometime around my own date of conception. Being that she's not grasping it yet, I point to her belly and then my own. And I say, how long has your belly looked like my belly? My hope is it would kind of be a look in the mirror wake-up call, but it didn't work. She said she had just been feeling bloated the last few months. She didn't believe she was pregnant until the ER resident did a bedside ultrasound to find the baby's heart rate. She was in labor and went upstairs to L&D. Oh, and she also had her 10-year-old daughter with her. That first child must have either been the easiest pregnancy of all time or the hardest pregnancy of all time to have a normal pregnancy just fly under the radar. It's either that or she was hard in denial. Story 19. My wife is a nurse and once told me about a guy who had injected creek water into his dong with an insulin needle. He heard that injecting water into your dong makes it bigger and hard-ons longer lasting. So while he and his girlfriend were camping, they decided to try it out with the bacteria-filled creek water. Apparently, it worked out fine for the first day, but after a couple days, his dong started turning colors and swelling. My wife said that by the time she saw it at the hospital, it looked like an eggplant with weird neon green pus coming out of the end. Story 20. So I was taking care of a guy who had an infected wound on his dong. He didn't get it checked out right away, picked at it, and tried to take care of it without having to see a doctor, because of course that's embarrassing to a lot of people. Finally, he realized things were not going well, and he ended up admitted to the hospital with a horrible wound. Bad enough, a surgeon had to go in, remove some dead tissue, and we, the nurses, got to change the dressing twice a day. This wound was the type that had to have gauze placed in the wound bed, called packing. It's painful and uncomfortable for patients no matter where the wound is, but you can imagine how this poor guy felt. He told his doc he wasn't intimately active, so the first night I take care of him, as I'm doing the dressing change, I ask him if he has any questions. Eventually, he'll have to go home and do it himself, so while doing wound care, I typically narrate what I'm doing and make sure patients can ask questions. Because of the nature of this wound, I had premedicated him with some IV narcotics, so he was a little loopy. He tells me he just can't figure out why he has this wound, so I start going through some standard questions. Do you have any other infected wounds? Are you around anyone who had infected wounds? Come to discover, he had regularly been getting handies from a gal who was a druggie and who had some open wounds on her face and forearms. I told him that's likely where he got it from, and he responded, "But I wasn't rubbing my dong on her arms or her face." So I said, no, but she probably touched or picked at those sores before dealing with you. If she didn't wash her hands well enough between touching her sores and giving you a handy, she spread those germs to you. He had no clue. He had no idea why he should have included this information in his history, and he had no practical understanding of how germs are spread. But please remember the entire scene. I've got this guy's dong in my gloved hand, cleaning and packing this bad wound that doesn't smell great, has a little yucky drainage, and I'm discussing handies. I'm down within a foot or so of his dong because his wound tunnels a bit and I've got to use a Q-tip in order to delicately stuff this gauze tape into a sensitive area. I'm a moderately attractive gal around his age. I wasn't embarrassed. I'm a matter-of-fact sort of person and I wanted this guy to understand how to take care of himself and stay clean. He wasn't embarrassed either. He really wanted to understand and he was also high on fentanyl. But it was a little absurd and made me laugh in retrospect because I assume most people don't handle other people's genitalia or talk about handies at work. Story 22. I recently went to the doctor. She was a rather young female doctor, likely late 30s. I'm 24. She asked me if I was intimately active and I told her no and that I've never banged. She proceeded to give me the look my mom used to give me when I was a kid, when I used to fall on my butt pretending to be Superman around the house. You know, that look of pity mixed with a little bit of amusement. It didn't help that she began telling me, instead of reminding me what precautions I should take or the benefits of safe banging, which would have been the safe thing to do, how surprised she was someone like me went through all of college not banging, and how she greatly admires my ability to remain abstinent, and how I will definitely lose it to a nice girl someday and that more guys need to be like me. Yeah, as if that look she gave me before she said all that wasn't awkward enough. It surprises me that people in the medical profession like this can still be, kinda judgy about it. Cause even though, sure, she was nice about it, it was still a judgment. It implies that she would have thought lesser of someone who had banged someone before, which is just stupid. Just let people do things when they're ready to, geez. Story 22. I'm a nurse practitioner in a publicly funded STD clinic in the US. I have dozens of good ones, but 2 brief ones to start. First of all, the guy who tried to cure his rectal gonorrhea by shoving garlic cloves up his butt for a month. Guess what? Didn't work. And the second one is a guy who tried to cure his chlamydia by smoking a ton of weed. Because pot cures everything. Also, didn't work. At least this guy had an angry girlfriend who brought him back to the clinic and insisted he take antibiotics. Story 23. I used to do healthy volunteer medical trials in Toronto to make ends meet when I was a student. We were testing this incontinence drug. It was a several-day trial, and I crap you not, the nurse asked this question every single time for the first 2 days. Is the reason for this bathroom visit urine, bowel, or intimate? Part of me just wanted to say intimate every time, but I didn't want to get kicked out of the study. The hilarious thing was that when I pointed out to them that it was a useless floating data point because they weren't recording when and how much water we were drinking, they just blinked at me like a deer in the headlights. Being a lab rat was a pretty good job, though.